United Nations hymn. Eagerly musician, sweep your string, elative, optative, so we may sing, our several voices interblending, playfully contending, not interfering, but co-inhering. For all within the cincture of the sound is holy ground, where all are brothers, none faceless others. Let mortals beware of words, for with words we lie, can say peace when we mean war, foul thoughts speak fair and promise falsely. But song is true. Let music for peace be the paradigm, for peace means to change at the right time as the world's clock goes tick and tock. So may the story of our human city presently move like music when begotten notes new notes beget, making the flowing of time a growing, till it what it could be, at last it is. Where even sadness is a form of gladness, where fate is freedom, grace, and surprise.
Honorable Directors, Chairs, Delegates, and guests, welcome to the 28th Annual BEIMUN Conference, Discourse in a Fragmented World. We are overjoyed that all of you have been able to join us today, although it is ever so unfortunate that we have not been able to meet in person. Yet, just as the United Nations is founded upon the provision of solutions in the face of adversity, the BEIMUN team has put in months of work throughout the ever-changing conditions of the COVID-19 pandemic to ensure that this conference runs smoothly and provides a fruitful experience for all. To begin this ceremony, the BEIMUN Secretariat team would be honored to call upon Mr. Patrick Hurworth, the International School of Beijing's esteemed head of school since 2017, to make his opening remarks. Mr. Hurworth, you now have the floor.
Everyone, I'm Patrick Howerth. I'm the head of school at the International School of Beijing, and I am delighted and honoured to welcome you to this year's BEIMUN conference. I congratulate you for being involved. I take my hat off to you for the time and passion and energy you put into preparing for the conference, not least the team here at ISB, who I know have been working around the clock, sometimes on campus, mostly off campus, with the teacher supervisors to bring you this year's conference. The last 13 months have illustrated once more how essential the skills of diplomacy are, how necessary to our world and its healthy future, the ability to problem solve across cultural borders, boundaries, linguistic challenges, and cultural differences, how essential those skills are in order for us to wrestle with and solve the thorniest of problems, not least, of course, the pandemic, which still rages across much of the world. And the discourse that we've seen over recent years in different parts of the world also seems to be the kind that does indeed fragment, that sorts people into different groups, that has a demeaning feel to it, that sets up walls and borders that stand in the way between constructive dialogue, the like of which you will have during the course of this conference, with the right spirit in your hearts and the right intellect as well, one that is designed to bring people together. My generation haven't done a particularly great job of solving world's problems. Just when we think we're about to make a breakthrough for humanity, something or someone or groups of people show themselves to have different motives. And I'm delighted to work in a school and to represent students who have the high aspirations of being part of a generation that will make life better for humanity. And again, for that, you have my thanks and my admiration for being such caring individuals and such great students committed to doing the right thing for our world. I think we have about 600 students from 38 different schools around the world participating. And goodness me, I wish that I was giving this address in the theatre with everybody assembled, as I have done in recent years at ISB, not least because this is our 40th anniversary at the International School of Beijing, and it would have been absolutely extraordinary to have you part of that as well. BEIMUN is an iconic part of the ISB fabric, so welcome. My thanks again to you and your teachers and the ISB team for making this possible. Enjoy it, make friends, and thank you again for your commitment to learning more about each other and solving problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurworth. We would now like to introduce ISB's choir, who have been working together remotely to perform this virtual performance. Take it away.
One, two, three. Each word a stone. We can build a wall. We can build a wall. We can build a wall or a path to each other. To each other. A path to each other. Each other. A path to each other. Each word a stone. We can build a wall. A stone. We can build a wall. A stone. We can build a wall. We can build a wall. We're a path to each other. To each other. A path to each other. Each other. Each path to each other. Each other. We can build a path. 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 Each word a stone. We can build a path to each other.
Next, we would like to call upon Secretary General Jaime A to make his speech and officially begin the conference with the gavel tap. Secretary General, you now have the floor.
Honorable delegates and esteemed guests, welcome to the 28th Annual BEIMUN Conference. My name is Jaime A, and I am honored to serve as your Secretary General. Thank you for joining us at the first ever virtual event of our history. Since MUN serves as a platform for scholars to learn about current events, we must not disregard the fact that the past 14 months have been hectic. Most, if not all, participants here have been through the cycle of the implementation of lockdowns, travel bans, school closure, and the reopening of cities. We must first acknowledge the resilience of our international community and the power of diplomacy during the most difficult of times. The pandemic has been a true test of the mechanisms currently in place to keep our world running. Issues that have newly emerged or profoundly developed during this period, such as the economic recession, unsustainable health emergency response systems, and social unrest, are proof that discourse is inadequate in our fragmented world. In the 21st century, the polarization of our everyday discourse is the greatest challenge to face humanity. In multiple regions around the world, minorities and the disadvantaged population are being threatened by the leaders whose job is to protect them. Quite shockingly, even the UN has struggled to respond to such issues. A growing presence of world leaders who call for protectionism and a return to isolationism has hindered much of the progress that the United Nations has made in the previous decades. Under current circumstances, scapegoating political leaders would be the easy thing to do. However, the point of diplomacy and MUN is to systematically campaign for what is right and the common good. What the international community does not realize is that each one of us has, at some point, contributed to the polarization of media. We must take more responsibility in our actions and not fall victim to the rippling effects of the unscrupulous practices. Year 2021 finds many people under increased pressure to choose sides, which has resulted in conclusions being formed prior to the collection of sufficient evidence. Media platforms that we trust now appear to prioritize opinions over facts while demoralizing those who express dissent. Increasingly, web algorithm is being suppressed to overshadow certain events, and fringe conspiracy theories have arisen from the far left and right of the political spectrum. We must not let our ignorance, in particular the illusion of knowledge and hope, allow us to continue fueling the polarization of media. Never in a million years have we imagined finding ourselves calling in from 10 different countries to attend this virtual event that has traditionally been hosted on our campus. For the past 28 years, BEIMUN has been fully committed to fostering diplomacy and strong leadership. I commend each and every one of you for taking this initiative to join us in making progress on our founder, Erwin Stein's mission. Through our compelling debate in the coming days, I hope that all students can obtain crucial critical thinking and communication skills while learning to circumnavigate the challenges that our generation will ultimately face. To our new delegates, I challenge you to make your very first speech. Experience does not solely make you better. It is the willingness to take risks and to advocate for the right thing that makes you a stronger delegate. Instead of overvaluing individual speaking prowess and competing with one another, I would call upon all participants to embrace the benefits of collaboration. After all, the United Nations did not exist as a platform for countries to exert its international dominance and to force other member states into adopting its policies and ideologies. My hope for all students is to leave as a more competent speaker and as a more prudent leader. To achieve this, we must consider potential implications of our actions, understand what needs to be prioritized, and learn to collaborate effectively. On behalf of our BEIMUN leadership team, I must express my utmost gratitude for your flexibility and wholehearted support during this time of great uncertainty. For our efforts today to translate into reconciliation and prosperity into moral society, we must continue seeking out discourse in a fragmented world. Thank you. I officially declare that the 28th annual session of BEIMUN has opened.
BEIMUN is honored to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Jaime A. FlorCruz, former CNN Beijing Bureau Chief and current adjunct professor at Peking University. He is also a fellow parent of two ISB alumnus from the class of 2005 and 2008. He started his journalistic career in China in 1980 when he worked as a reporter for New Week's magazine. In 1982, he joined Time Magazine's Beijing Bureau and served as Beijing Bureau Chief from 1990 to 2000. In addition to his correspondent work via on-air reporting in the weekly online column Jaime's China, he spearheaded the strategic planning of CNN's news coverage of China from 2001 to 2004. Having studied and worked as a journalist in China for over 40 years, he has extensive knowledge of China's history, society, and politics, and has witnessed many of its significant events of the past 3 decades. Being the longest-serving foreign correspondent in China to date, he is considered the Dean of the Foreign Press Corps in Beijing. He has also held many notable positions, having been the 2-term president of the 300-member Foreign Correspondents Club of China and the Edward R. Murrow Press Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York. Welcome, Mr. FlorCruz. You now have the floor.
Greetings, everyone. I'm happy to join your forum, if only virtually, because I know how compelling BEIMUN conferences can be. My daughter Michelle, who graduated from ISB in 2008, had taken part in the BEIMUN conference and remembers what a wonderful experience it was. It has helped broaden her worldview and triggered her interest in international affairs and cross-culture exchanges. I'm a journalist and a China watcher. I've lived and worked in China for nearly 50 years as a political exile, a student, a Beijing-based reporter, and as a China watcher. As a foreign correspondent in China, I did a wide range of stories. I covered big breaking news, the Hong Kong handover in 1997, and the Wenchuan earthquake in 2008. I did feature stories as well, like the opening of the first McDonald's outlet in Beijing in the early 1990s, the spread of HIV/AIDS epidemic in rural Henan province, and the drafting of Yao Ming by Houston Rockets into the NBA in the early 2000s, and of course, the 2008 Olympics. So I look back at my time as a journalist with much pride and a bit of nostalgia. I retired as a journalist over 5 years ago, and now I teach a media course at the School of Journalism and Communication at Peking University. Now, I've been stranded in Manila since November 2019, unable to return to Beijing to resume teaching, and that's why I can only join you virtually. We now live in a dangerous time. A deadly pandemic is spreading across the globe. The COVID-19 virus has infected millions of patients and has killed hundreds of thousands. Millions are losing jobs, and our daily lives has changed abruptly, dramatically, and perhaps for a long time. News media outlets are suffering too. Tens of thousands of workers at news companies in the US and other countries have been laid off, furloughed, or had their salary reduced. Some publications that rely on advertising have folded up. Still, reporters around the world are doing a fine job in informing the public, and it's a difficult and dangerous assignment. Journalists are fighting a war against an invisible and deadly enemy. The pandemic is now causing fear across the globe because millions of people are on lockdown, travel is restricted, and markets are in turmoil. It's an uneasy time. And in this time, we have witnessed the media at its best, playing a critical role in crisis management and crisis communications. Media groups, for example, have used various platforms to carry out press briefings, which help reassure the public that authorities are doing what needs to be done and that this too shall pass. Just as important, journalists are giving voice to whistleblowers like Dr. Li Wenliang in Wuhan and Captain Brett Crozier, the commander of a US aircraft carrier. You'll remember how the two whistleblowers faced severe punishment for warning about the spread of the virus in their respective organizations. Dr. Li died working in the front line, and Captain Crozier was dismissed from his post. But we remember the two, among many others, as heroes for blowing the whistle and prompting action. Now, journalists around the world are working 24/7, covering the story from different angles. They do inspiring stories of medical workers risking their lives in the front line, and they produce uplifting video clips of resilient people coping with the pandemic. Many reporters are doing fact-checking, debunking falsehoods, and separating myths from facts. They're doing investigative reports, exposing wrongdoings, bureaucratic failures, and bad deeds that endanger the public. And yet, journalists are not always getting their due recognition. In some places, they are dismissed as fake news or enemy of the people. In others, journalists face censorship, reprimand, expulsion, or even death threats, simply for doing their jobs. It's even harder now for journalists because new technology is changing the way news is disseminated and consumed. Now everyone can be a journalist. Virtually all of us, you and me, we can be news gatherers and reporters. We can take pictures and shoot videos using a smartphone and then beam them across the world instantly and then share them with our friends and the general public. News and information can now be shared more quickly, widely, and cheaply. Thanks to the internet and smartphones and now the 5G, people can now get the news quickly and cheaply on Facebook, Twitter, WeChat, TikTok, YouTube, and many other platforms. Surely, these new technology benefit the public. They have created jobs and created wealth and enabled spread of information. They help expose wrongdoings. They also help break the state's monopoly on truth. They challenge traditional narratives, traditional beliefs by offering diverse sources of information and dissenting points of view. They do help curb disinformation and propaganda. However, they also bring bad influences. Criminals all over the world use the internet and its various platforms to launder money, push illegal gambling, pornography, prostitution, phishing scams, and other crimes. Terror organizations and extremist fringe groups have used the internet to communicate and coordinate activities or to spread propaganda. There is a virus, there is a killer virus, the COVID-19, but it's not just the COVID-19. There is also the virus of fake news. Like COVID, fake news is deadly too. Rumors can trigger fear, and fear could trigger public hysteria, which could then lead to social and economic disruption, poverty, hunger, even deaths. Now, we all stand for freedom of speech and freedom of information. They are fundamentally important in our lives, and we must fight for them, we must protect them. But there is a huge ethical and legal difference between a whistleblower and a criminal who maliciously spreads lies for nefarious motives. The proverbial man who shouts fire inside a movie house, intentionally causing panic and deaths. There is a fundamental difference between a whistleblower and a crook who is selling lies and peddling propaganda. Now, we live in an increasingly polarized world. In many countries and societies, we are politically, economically, and culturally divided. We are balkanized by ideology and information. Many communities and fringe groups live in their own factual universe. To some, for example, global warming is merely a hoax. And there are many other examples. There's one posting I saw recently which claims that Barack Obama was arrested for espionage, leaking classified information to China. There are many wild rumors and conspiracy theories, and you can find a long list of them exposed and debunked in various apps like Snopes, factcheck.org, and HoaxSlayer. Of course, there are antidotes to this virus. We can find on the internet several platforms offering helpful tips on how to recognize a fake news story and how to stop yourself from sharing false information. Still, the virus of fake information continues to spread. Why? Well, the creators of fake news are getting more slick. You must have heard of deep fake, the use of high tech, of AI and Photoshop that makes people like Barack Obama and Donald Trump appear to realistically say or do something they did not. They look real. So we must fight fake news when we see them. Problem is, some studies show fake news spreads faster than truth, especially online. An MIT study, for instance, looked at a decade of tweets and finds that fake news spread faster, farther, and deeper and wider than truth. So why is that? Well, there's still little empirical data to be able to explain why, and more studies need to be made. But meantime, it does seem to show that people spread false news faster than truth because, some experts say, it's simply human nature. Now, every day we consumers are bombarded by news and information, but mixed with gossips and rumors and opinions coming from all sorts of sources. The problem is some people choose to get them only in small doses from a small selection of media sources. Worse, some consumers of information blindly believe that anything in the social media are true. If it's on the internet, they say, it must be true. Of course not. And that's why we must be discriminating in the way we consume the news. And that's why we advise people to seek a healthy, balanced news diet. Just as we aim to have a balanced daily diet of food, a good mix of protein, carbohydrates, and vegetables, we should also seek to have a good daily intake of information coming from diverse and credible sources. That's what we call a balanced news diet. Otherwise, we may get quarantined in what we call the echo chamber. That's what happens when we rely on just one source, when we listen only to friends who share our views and to no one else. And in the long run, we start to believe only what we think because it's the only voice we hear. Now, since we're talking of diets, let me offer a counterintuitive advice. How about trying the equivalent of intermittent fasting of news by turning off your news feed, at least sometimes, at least for a few hours? Yes, we need to keep up with consequential breaking news. Yes, we need to get accurate information about what's going on around us, information that matters to us, our families, and our communities. But we also need to hit the pause button to take a deep breath and clear our minds. So turn off the news, read a book, listen to music, take a walk, chat with your family, or visit a friend, a neighbor. When you reboot your news feed, which you should, and the information will still be there. And with a decluttered mind, you will probably make a better sense of them all. We now live in a world where information is plentiful and understanding too little. There's so much void out there, and it's up to the journalists, the educators, and you, the woke citizens, to fill the void. I'm sure you're all eager to see the end of this pandemic. I am too. Meantime, it's probably not too early to draw some lessons from the pandemic and its aftermath. This period of isolation, of slowdowns and closures, it's actually an opportune time to do some self-reflection and discussion about our society and our country and the world, about our nature and the planet and all the interrelationships. I think this year of the ox is a good time to study how we can better seek harmony with ourselves, with our family and our community, and harmony with nature. It's time, for example, that we figure out how we can best coexist with nature, the flora and the fauna, the mountains and lakes and forests around us. We can never prevent future outbreaks of pandemics if we do not stop intruding into the natural habitats of the animal kingdom. So let's continue to seek a world that is based not on fear and greed and hate, but on unity and empathy and harmony. Let's join the fight against disinformation and misinformation. Together, let us bring down walls and let's bring down barriers. This is Jaime FlorCruz from Manila, Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. FlorCruz. Before we officially dismiss everyone, we'd like to establish a few expectations and provide some tips for the following days of the conference. We understand that navigating a conference online and using Teams may be unfamiliar with many of you, so we ask for your patience and we'll be providing all the help we can. When in debate, please mute yourself on Teams when you have not been recognized. Raising your hand on Teams will be the substitute for raising your placard. Please always keep your camera on and be dressed in formal wear. We recommend keeping MEN1 always open on a separate window. If you experience any technical difficulties, visit our 000 Help Desk channel, where our heads of admin will be available throughout the entire duration of the conference. And most importantly, please remain respectful and on task. The BEIMUN team reserves the right to retract your participation certificate if you are not present or disruptive during debate. If you have any questions, please refer to our handbook, email your chair, or contact a member of the Secretariat. For any unresolvable technical difficulties, email our heads of admin Shane Lin or Lane Du Yang. That being said, see you all tomorrow. We wish you all a fruitful and engaging debate. This concludes the end of our opening ceremony. Conference adjourned.